Eye on elections. The Department of Justice is suing Arizona over the state's new voting law. We have analysis. Gender issues, while Republican lawmakers plan to push back against the Biden administration's efforts to reconfigure Title IX. Arrival in Africa. The Holy Father's envoy receives a warm welcome in South Sudan. And hope for healing. Learn more about the conversion story of a woman from Ohio who might be a saint. On EWTN News Nightly for Wednesday, July 6, 2022. Thank you so much for being with us tonight on the Feast of St. Maria Goretti. I'm Owen Jensen, in for Tracy Sable. Mississippi's pro-life heartbeat law is on track to go into effect tomorrow. This comes after a judge ruled against a last-minute submission from the state's only abortion clinic. Jackson Women's Health Organization sought a temporary order to remain open. It's the same clinic which lost its case before the Supreme Court in the decision which struck down Roe v. Wade. Republican Governor Tate Reeves calls the ruling, quote, a great victory for life. The Biden administration is moving to overhaul Title IX. Since 1972, the measure has provided opportunities for women in education and sports. It prohibits sex-based discrimination in schools that get federal dollars. The White House wants to extend protections to include sexual orientation and gender identity. Republicans say that will hurt women, especially in sports. Capitol Hill correspondent Erik Rosales reports.
The Biden administration wants to change a measure which lawmakers say has been part of the fabric of education. Republican Senator Tommy Tuberville, who coached at the high school and college level, says Title IX has opened the doors for women, and he's one of the people rejecting the White House's proposed changes.
I've seen firsthand the success of what's happened to Title IX. Maybe one of the best kept secrets up here that's happened in this building.
Senator Tommy Tuberville adds there has been a 600% increase in scholarships for women's sports since Title IX became law in 1972. But the Biden administration's new rules would allow people to self-identify as female and compete in women's athletics, a plan Republican critics say alters the playing field.
The Biden administration is working to redefine sex to include gender identity in the name of anti-discrimination. But this is discrimination against women, plain and simple.
She adds that women and young girls will pay the price because they will be denied athletic scholarships and career opportunities. Others agree. Senator Tuberville, the former football coach at Auburn University, says Democrats have brought politics to the playing field. He worries women will miss out on life lessons from sports.
Women are playing for second, third, and fourth. How can you give a post-game locker room speech or a halftime speech to a young lady knowing that she's not competing to win, she's competing for second?
Republicans also say that ignoring biological differences between male and female athletes will be the end of women's sports.
If they get their way in changing Title IX, you're going to end up with a team of men and a team of former men.
The rulemaking process allows for public comment until the end of August. The Department of Education will have the final say on whatever changes will be made. Congress will also have to agree to any rule changes. At the Capitol, Erik Rosales, EWTN News Nightly.
Erik, thank you. President Joe Biden traveled to Cleveland today to tout his economic record. Critics say he has presided over the worst inflation in 40 years, the highest gas prices on record, and supply chain shortages. The president says more help is on the way.
I campaigned to restore the backbone of this country, the middle class and unions, because I know this. The middle class built America, and unions built the middle class of today. I'm keeping a promise, one of the most significant achievement union workers and retirees have received in over 50 years.
President Biden says he plans to use money from the American Rescue Plan to prop up some pension plans that were in danger of collapsing.
Millions of retirees were at risk of losing their retirement security through no fault of their own, based on conditions and unrelenting attacks on unions that were taking place.
The White House says the money will help up to 3 million Americans avoid severe cuts in retirement benefits. The community outside of Chicago, site of a deadly shooting during a July 4th parade, continues to mourn the 7 people who died. Trinity Grace Church held a prayer vigil last night for those who died and the dozens more who were wounded from the rooftop shooting. Meanwhile, authorities say a 21-year-old suspect has been charged and has confessed to police. He's being held without bail. A state's attorney says there will be, quote, many more charges coming. The U.S. Department of Justice is suing the state of Arizona. The state's Republican governor recently signed a measure requiring proof of citizenship when voting in presidential elections, or if using the state's vote-by-mail system. The DOJ says the requirement is in violation of 2 existing laws. And joining me now to discuss is Mike Davis, founder and president of the Article 3 Project. Mike, welcome back. Great to see you. Get right to it here. Let's talk more about this lawsuit, the DOJ against Arizona. What's going on here? What does the DOJ say Arizona is violating?
Well, it's interesting. The Department of Justice is saying that under federal statute, Arizona is not allowed to ask people who are registering to vote whether they're U.S. citizens. If you look at the U.S. Constitution gives state legislatures the power to determine who is qualified to vote. And under the Constitution, state legislatures determine the time, place, and manner of elections unless Congress steps in. So the issue here is this is not a time, place, and manner regulation that Congress has authority to address. This is a qualification. Issue that Congress may or may not have authority to address. There was a Supreme Court decision in 2012 that made this an open question this will likely go to the Supreme Court again.
All right, so an AP article here. The Republican-controlled legislature was well aware of the federal law, but they argue the new law would boost election security. Do you agree?
I mean, yeah, they need to boost election security. You see the Biden administration having amnesty on our southern border and importing illegal economic migrants from Central America unrestricted. And if there's not a way to verify that they're citizens when they're registering to vote, we're going to have all kinds of voter fraud.
Opponents, as you know, they'll push back and say this hurts the elderly, this hurts the poor, hurts disabled people because they say they don't have access to IDs. And you say what?
Well, you know, what's amazing to me is the same Democrats who wanted people to have a COVID ID to get around society for 2 years seem to think that it's difficult for people to go to get a driver's license. I don't know of anyone in my family or any other family who has a problem getting a driver's license.
How do you see this playing out? I know you don't have a crystal ball, but who has the better case here, DOJ or Arizona?
So politically, the Arizona state legislature certainly has a better case. The issue is whether the Supreme Court is willing to adjust its precedent from 12 years ago to address the constitutional issue here, which is Arizona clearly has the right to make sure that its voters are citizens of the United States and there's not voter fraud in its state.
Well, 6-3 conservative majority, does that help Arizona's case if it goes that far?
Well, the Chief Justice was with the other side in this case 12 years ago, but since then we've had Justice Gorsuch, Justice Kavanaugh, and Justice Barrett. So we'll see. I mean, it looks like a pretty good case for Arizona.
For sure. Very interesting. We'll continue to follow. Let's move on here to pro-life laws in both Mississippi and Florida are now in effect following legal challenges. What do those laws look like in each state, please? Florida and, what did I say? Florida and Mississippi.
Well, the states are doing what states did for the first 200 years of our republic before the Supreme Court wrongly decided Roe versus Wade 49 years ago, and that is that they can regulate medical procedures, they can regulate abortions, they can regulate industries in their state just like every other industry, just like every other medical procedure. So you're going to see in these states that there's a limitation on, there's no longer this unrestricted right for people to get to kill their unborn babies until the moment of birth. There are going to be restrictions on this, and depending on the state you're in, there are going to be more restrictions than others. I would say if you don't like abortion restrictions, move to California. If you don't like COVID restrictions, move to Florida.
And pretty much, it's pretty much half and half right now, right, in terms of for states, either pro-abortion or pro-life.
Yeah, I mean, it's broken down. It's actually where it's supposed to be now. It's in the democratic process, state by state, 50 laboratories of democracy, and it's not being decided by 7 unelected, lifetime appointed federal judges on the Supreme Court, which is what happened 49 years ago in Roe versus Wade.
You know, it's absolutely stunning, too, when you watch all the reaction, how so many people, especially on the left, all right, they believe that somehow abortion is done with for good, and they're really lying. They're trying to gin it up here. And, how does this calm down? How does this begin to get back to this, like you said, it goes back to the states now?
Yeah, this is similar to welfare reform back in 1994, 95, 96, whenever they passed it, when Republicans passed welfare reform, the left said that people are going to die on the streets. Well, that's not what happened. You had 50 laboratories of democracy with welfare reform. Welfare rules plummeted by 90%. What you're going to see here is there going to be abortion regulations that make it where you can't get partial birth abortions. You can't kill your unborn child up until the moment of birth. There are going to be restrictions in your state. In some states, it's going to be more restrictive than others. But this is how the democratic process works in our republic.
Mike, thank you very much for your time today and your insights. Appreciate it very much. Have a good rest of your evening.
Thank you.
Coming up, the Vatican Secretary of State arrives in South Sudan. A Catholic priest in Hong Kong has told missionaries there to expect a much more difficult future, according to a report in Reuters. The Christians were told Beijing will tighten control over the exercise of religion in the former British territory. For more on this story, including why Archbishop Herrera Corona says Catholics might be specifically targeted by China's communist government, visit our partners at CatholicNewsAgency.com. A foreign ministry official in China has launched a scathing attack on the United States and NATO. The government spokesman says the nearly 36 country alliance mostly serves U.S. interests. The remark comes just days before a meeting between high-ranking officials from Washington and Beijing. U.S.-China relations are dominated by disputes over issues like trade and human rights. The Vatican Secretary of State receives a joyful welcome in South Sudan. State officials and Catholic faithful greeted Cardinal Pietro Parolin upon his arrival in South Sudan today. He's traveling in place of the Holy Father, whose planned visit was postponed because of knee problems. Cardinal Parolin is seeking to bring peace to refugees who face ongoing deadly violence. Pope Francis says 2 women will be appointed to the committee that elects bishops. This is the first time women will serve in that role. The Holy Father did not identify his 2 choices. He made the announcement during the second part of an interview with Reuters that was released earlier today. Well, reaction continues to pour in following the release of the first part of the Holy Father's 90-minute interview with Reuters. In that excerpt released yesterday, the Holy Father addressed rumors he's about to resign. He also discussed his health and mentioned his willingness to travel to Russia and Ukraine. The interview made headlines around the world. Joining us now from Rome is Andreas Thonhauser, EWTN Vatican Bureau Chief. Andreas, great to see you. Tell us more, please, about what the Holy Father said.
Sure, Owen. I am still alive. This is how Pope Francis choked in an interview with Reuters, a news agency. The interview was released at the beginning of this week, and it focused on 4 main topics. First, the Pope's health, the right to life and Roe v. Wade, his possible resignation, and potential trips to Moscow and Kiev. In a 19 minutes long interview, which Pope Francis actually attended without the help of others, using only a cane, it seemed important to the Holy Father to not only communicate, but also to demonstrate that he is well and, as he said, slowly getting better. He does not have cancer, Pope Francis clarified, and added jokingly, unless the doctors had not told him. There have been many rumors over the last months that Pope Francis is seriously ill, and his knee pains were merely symptoms of something more severe. This helped fuel speculations that he was also planning to resign at the end of August, because on the 28th of August, he will travel to L'Aquila, The Italian city in the Abruzzi Mountains is associated with Pope St. Celestine V, who at the end of the 13th century retreated from his post at the Vatican. Pope Francis commented that all of these coincidences made something that the same liturgy would happen again. But it never entered my mind, he added. For the moment, he would absolutely not consider stepping down. Nevertheless, he had to cancel his long-anticipated trip to Africa, which would have taken place this week. Pope Francis sent his Secretary of State, Cardinal Parolin, instead. He also celebrated Mass for the Congolese diaspora living in Rome just this week, expressing his frustration about not being able to be in Congo and South Sudan. A trip to Canada, which is planned for later this month, is still set to take place.
Andreas, you mentioned that the Pope Francis was also asked about Roe v. Wade being overturned by the U.S. Supreme Court. What did he say specifically, please?
So, yeah, the U.S. Supreme Court's decision overturning Roe v. Wade was an important topic as well in this interview. The pontiff said that he respected the decision, but he had not studied it enough to comment on it from a juridic point of view. However, he condemned abortion once again, likening it to hiring a hitman. Is it legitimate, is it right, he asked rhetorically, to eliminate a human life to resolve a problem? At the same time, Owen, the Holy Father also explained his pastoral approach, as he called it, towards Catholic politicians who support abortion, saying when the Church loses a bishop or when the Church loses its pastoral nature, when a bishop loses his pastoral nature, it causes a political problem. Last week, on the solemnity of Saints Peter and Paul, Nancy Pelosi, the U.S. Speaker of the House, was present during a papal mass in St. Peter's. The staunch supporter of abortion received communion from a priest there, despite the request from Archbishop Salvatore Cordileone of her home diocese of San Francisco that she should not receive it because of her political activism against the right to life.
And quickly, finally, Andreas, what did Pope Francis say about his upcoming trips?
Well, the Pope also spoke about the possibility of a trip to Moscow regarding the current war in Ukraine. He said, and I quote, "I would like to go to the Ukraine and I wanted to go to Moscow first. We exchanged messages about this because I thought that if the Russian president gave me a small window to serve the cause of peace." He also mentioned that a visit to Ukraine is now a possibility, sometime after his journey to Canada. And by the way, this trip to Canada is fully confirmed now. He did add, the first thing is to go to Russia to try to help in some way.
All right, Andreas Thonhauser, EWTN Vatican Bureau Chief, thank you very much and great to see you. Up next, a woman associated with EWTN Foundress Mother Angelica might be a saint. We have her story. A new episode of EWTN's They Might Be Saints is doing a deep dive into a mystic and visionary from Canton, Ohio, the same town, yes, as Mother Angelica. Rhoda Wise, a convert to Catholicism, is known for her devotion to St. Therese, the Little Flower. She is also known for her healings, one of which involved the foundress of EWTN. And joining us now to discuss is Michael O'Neill, host of EWTN's They Might Be Saints. Michael, welcome back. Great to see you. Let's talk more about Rhoda Wise. I did a little research on her just before our broadcast here. What an amazing life, but you know more about it than I do.
Yeah, and she has an incredible connection to EWTN. Perhaps if there's no Rhoda Wise, there's no EWTN. But she's an incredible mystic, stigmatic, visionary, and healer from Canton, Ohio. Lived from 1888 to 1948. And now, as all the episodes that I do of They Might Be Saints, she's another person from America on the path to sainthood.
So the connection with, let me rephrase it. She knew Mother Angelica, but what was their connection? What happened between them?
So Rhoda Wise was a woman who she started off as a Protestant, and then she converted to Catholicism. And in her home, which is now known as the Miracle House of Rhoda Wise, people can still visit it in Canton. People would often come to see her and seek out healings because she had these mystical gifts, you might say. And Rita Rizzo, the future Mother Angelica, at the age of 19, she went to visit Rhoda Wise as she had this condition called a drop stomach. It was extremely painful for her, and she wasn't all that religious or all that faithful. But after that experience, she was introduced to St. Therese and the novena to St. Therese. After 9 days of prayer, her dropped stomach was healed and she was perfectly healthy. And as a result of that spiritual experience, she went on to befriend Rhoda Wise and go on to enter a convent and later become Mother Angelica and later found EWTN. So Rhoda Wise has a very strong connection here with EWTN.
Right. And these stories always, they send tingles up your spine, right? When Rhoda talked about, she said she saw Jesus, right? A couple of times at least?
Yeah, Rhoda's life is filled with incredible mystical phenomena. Not only was she healed of a stomach wound and a broken foot, and she had visions of Jesus, but she also, and visions of St. Therese, but she also had the stigmata, the wounds of Christ, which on Fridays for several years, it started on a Friday, and then every day from 12 to 3, she bore the wounds of Christ in her hands, in her feet, in her forehead, in her eyes even, and thousands of people would line up to see her. So it's an incredible phenomenon that surrounded this, Rhoda Wise.
What did you learn yourself by working on this episode? You know, they say when you work, you learn, right? So what did you learn?
Well, it's to that exact point of many people throughout Christian history, many saints and mystics, they have private phenomena, they have private situations that happen. But Rhoda's suffering, Rhoda's experience with the stigmata, with the healings, they were experienced by many people. So people would come in the hundreds or thousands on any given day by busload. And there are some amazing photos in this episode of They Might Be Saints, which documents so many people coming to see Rhoda Wise. So this wasn't just a private phenomenon that nobody knew about. She's a very famous person in the history of Canton, Ohio. And many people, even today, still go to her home, the Shrine of Rhoda Wise.
And here we live in a time of, let's face it right now, there's a lot of anger, uncertainty, division in our country, especially here in the United States. How might you think if people just picked up a book or went on the internet and did a search of Rhoda Wise, and if they just read a description about, I tell you, it made me feel better after I read it. Do you think she could help? How is she relevant today, I guess is my question.
So I think everybody across the board, Catholics and otherwise, are inspired by miracles. And the person of Rhoda Wise was surrounded by miracles and mystical phenomena. So her story is fascinating. And the fact that people would come to her and they'd be healed. And Rhoda Wise experienced her own healings as well. But I think what's particularly noteworthy about Rhoda Wise is how much she suffered. And she united her suffering to Jesus on the cross in a redemptive way. So I think that we all suffer in our own various ways, but seeing this future saint perhaps suffering in such a way and offering up her suffering is inspirational.
Let's change gears a little bit here. As we mentioned earlier in our show, today is the feast of St. Maria Goretti. A lot of people don't know about her. She's got an amazing story, born in Italy, I believe, and murdered at a young age. And she's the patron saint of teenage girls. Go on from there, please.
So what's fascinating about Maria Goretti is she's one of the youngest saints we have in the history of the Catholic Church. Perhaps St. Dominic Savio and the youngest Fatima children are younger saints, but she's by far on that low end of the spectrum. And so people over the years have turned to her as a patron saint of purity because she was actually attacked by her family had to share a house with some other farm workers. And she was attacked at a very young age, and she defended herself, but she was stabbed in the process. And so people will point to her as this patron saint of purity or fighting for purity. But I think what the real takeaway is, because Maria Goretti, she actually was being attacked, so she was in no position to give in or not give in. So I think that the real focus on Maria Goretti is her forgiveness. So she actually warned her attacker out of concern for his own soul that such an act would lead to hell, for example. And then she also, on her deathbed, she was stabbed 14 times. She actually forgave her attacker. And she died, of course, and she dies a martyr. But then that young man who was attacking her, he went on to become a religious brother, seeing the example of forgiveness that she gave. So I think forgiveness is the big takeaway from this incredible saint, Maria Goretti.
Absolutely. I think you nailed it right there. Michael, that's about, I want to ask you, when can people watch the new episode, They May Be Saints?
So the new episode of They Might Be Saints, you can watch it each week. The program They Might Be Saints airs on Fridays at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. But tonight, I will be on EWTN Live with Father Mitch Pacwa. And as part of EWTN Live, they're going to show this program. and they're going to embed the program in there so you can watch it. So that will be 8 p.m. Eastern time, and then they'll do an encore tomorrow morning for those people who miss it. That'll be 10:30 a.m. Eastern time. So tonight at 8 or tomorrow at 10:30 are two opportunities to watch this program.
Yeah, make sure to watch. Michael, thank you very much. Great to see you today.
Thank you.
And we thank you for watching tonight. For the entire EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Owen Jensen. Good night and God bless.